Kobayashi's Dragon Maid's Weiss Schwarz set was released in Japan earlier this year on April 8th, 2022. That means it had plenty of time to source art from the anime adaptation, having had its first season in 2017 and the second season just last year in 2021. The set also includes characters seen in the second season, so they could use as much material from the show as they wanted. But they didn't. This is going to be a short exploration of the unique art of the Kobayashi set and how it's able to expand on the usual card art tropes we see from other sets due to using a medium that the game hasn't really used: manga. Face cards often feature a single character's face in an eye-level shot, focusing their face as the subject. An upside of this simplicity is visual clarity. Players can, at a glance, get enough visual information for what the card is just by recognizing the face. This also does the busy work of telling the story of that card. Many of these are just named after the character with some variant of an expression. Even without knowledge of the character, seeing the contextual clues of the simplistic face paired with the name and ability can often be enough of a clue. Kobayashi's face cards introduced an interesting addition through its panels. Along with a simple and clean shot centered on the face, we get elements retained from the visual language of manga. This card is taken from Elma's introduction chapter. We learn that she's from a different dragon faction from Toru, that they are slated as enemies, and as she's angry and starving, she's given food. Funnily enough, the text bubbles on the English cards are left untranslated, but they add in an extra layer of flavor onto the art itself by being a part of the art. Assuming you can read it, she's talking about what she's eating. Along with the overall expression, the internal dots found from the manga clue you onto the scene of the card without being too intrusive. It's an extra layer of storytelling found in the frame of the card that isn't just a little bit of flavor text tacked on. It forces players to have to engage with the art in that way. You kind of can't ignore the fact that there is direct dialogue, and it becomes a part of the visual identity. There's so much great visual variety due to its manga styling that even these simple face cards can be quite unique. Previously, cards might start blending together with few distinctions. Now there are more avenues, even if it's the same character, to have cards be distinct and easily identifiable as such. It's a pretty charming detail, giving so much character to cards we might otherwise glance over. Portrait cards pull back the camera to feature more of the character, or other visual information such as backgrounds and extra subjects. In prior sets, these portrait cards added an additional dynamic, where actions and expression can be more complex and involved. In some cases, they could even be in the middle of doing an action. They're posing, giving another way for players to remember specific cards. In terms of how many Kobayashi portrait cards are from panels directly, there seems to be a mix of ones clearly from the manga and others more ambiguous. The manga elements left behind make it clear the origins of many of the portraits. The charm of them remains the same, with speech bubbles and mimetic expressions that add that additional layer to the storytelling of the card. In some cases, they retained the original feel of the panels by shrinking and cropping it to size, giving the cards a very unique feel, almost as if you're holding onto a snapshot from the manga itself. And these cards are mostly the same as the face cards in terms of visual information. It's just a bit more open in what it can represent. But I think the dynamics of expanding on the art design can really be seen in multi-panel cards. Most cards usually have a single subject, with multiple characters or objects in the same frame, not as common. At first, this may seem a bit crowded, the visual information more involved to get the full scope of what exactly is going on, and from a glance they may even come off as confusing. And the same can be said about Kobayashi's multi-panel cards, where there are multiple things going on in the space of a single frame. But I think there's almost something uniquely positive about these complicated card arts. A review, Starlight for example, featured these cut-ins for the main cast, where the main character is featured prominently, but behind them was a scene from the show. the visual information here is of the same character, and so the clarity upon first glance is a lot less loaded. But the charm and distinct feel of these cards differentiate them from the other cards in the set, making them easily stand out and also capture the essence of that series. Starlight is about theater and stage play, and the dramatic flair of the cutouts, almost disrupting the background, fits in. For Kobayashi, a similar effect is found. Overcoming the barrier of visual information gives each card a very unique flair to them, showcasing the characters not just by a single expression, but by a whole narrative. Iruru's backstory is told to us in the chapter it appears over a single page, and while a card can't fit that entire page, they do a good job of isolating the first 2 panels onto the card, and highlighting the key details of her past admiration for humans. The card itself isn't an offensive card, and plays more of a supporting role as it gets sent to the waiting room. That is quite fitting, since it's these panels that precede the tragedy that happens directly after as humans invaded their land. Thus, as she's defeated here, you'll be able to find an even greater and stronger card for the future, a fitting parallel, as this history is what fuels her want for power and hatred for humans, and becomes stronger for the future. There are of course even bolder multi-panel cards, like this one for Elma, when they went out for a picnic and she meets a bear. It's 4 panels all cut into 1 card, which just sounds like a lot of material to work with. But by placing each panel on a gradual descent, it actually makes the card a lot easier to read. There's a clear progression from one to the next, and it also helps that the final panel is larger than the rest, emphasizing that one to be the main focus, and also an easy indicator for how to identify what the card is. Instead of having to worry about all of the above panels, you can just remember Elma's killer eyes. But if you trace the story through each panel, it's also quite fitting. She's looking for the kids who ran off, and if you get in her way, she won't hesitate to fight, in this case a random bear. Upon reversing her opponent, she'll salvage cards from the waiting room, which in the mechanics of the game is akin to picking things up that have been lost, which is what happens with Elma, eventually finding the kids after using her powers. Cards like this really highlight the source and builds up that unique immersion as if you were reading the manga on the card itself. And again, I think the ability to mold the art so closely with card effects and blend flavor is such a welcome charm to the feel of the set. There's a lot of really interesting cards from the set, from a visual standpoint, and they did a lot of neat tricks to make manga panels fit on a card and be legible. From expanding on previous tropes and breaking the mold for how they might be able to tell stories and blend flavor into the card art, I really just enjoy the concept of this set and the possible precedents it represents. I hope that, given the chance, Bushiroad takes more risks, because the results so far are pretty cool.